William Bengen spent 2 years running calculations that no financial planner had ever systematically attempted before him. In 1994, he published his findings in the Journal of Financial Planning, and the number that emerged from his spreadsheets, 4.1%, would quietly become the most consequential figure in the history of personal retirement planning. Bengen's question was deceptively simple. How much can a retiree withdraw from a portfolio each year, adjusting for inflation, without ever running out of money? To answer it, he didn't rely on average market returns. He tested every 30-year rolling period in U.S. market history going back to 1926, including the Great Depression, World War II, and the sustained inflation of the 1970s, and asked which withdrawal rate would have survived even the worst of these periods. The answer was 4.1%. Rounded to 4% for practical use, it became known as the safe withdrawal rate, or, in Bengen's own terminology, SAFEMAX. The implications were immediately radical. A portfolio of $1 million could safely sustain $40,000 in annual withdrawals, inflation-adjusted, for at least 30 years. A $2 million portfolio could sustain $80,000. Retirement was no longer a date on a calendar determined by age or employer. It was a math problem with a definable solution. 4 years later, in 1998, 3 professors at Trinity University in San Antonio, Philip Cooley, Carl Hubbard, and Daniel Walls, published what would become known as the Trinity Study. They extended Bengen's analysis using a broader dataset and different methodology, examining portfolio survival rates across multiple asset allocations and time horizons. Their conclusions supported Bengen's finding. A 4% withdrawal rate from a balanced portfolio of 50 to 75% stocks had a success rate of approximately 95% over any 30-year period in the historical record. What made the Trinity study particularly influential was its framing. It gave the 4% rule a probability, which transformed an abstract percentage into a usable decision-making tool. But here is where most popular coverage of this research makes a critical error, and where the practical implications diverge sharply depending on when you plan to retire. Both Bengen's original study and the Trinity study were built around a 30-year retirement horizon. That assumption was reasonable in 1994, when the typical retiree was 65. A 30-year window would carry most people to age 95. But the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, has introduced a fundamentally different scenario. If you retire at 35 or 40, you are not planning for 30 years. You are planning for 50 or 60. Wade Pfau, a professor of retirement income at the American College of Financial Services, addressed this directly in research published between 2012 and 2018. Pfau examined withdrawal rates across international markets and extended time horizons, and found that for a 50-year retirement, the historically safe withdrawal rate falls to approximately 3.3%. At a 3.3% withdrawal rate, the portfolio required to retire on $60,000 per year rises from $1.5 million to roughly $1.8 million. The gap is meaningful, and most popular FIRE calculators continue to understate it. The practical implication of Pfau's research is what the FIRE community has formalized as the 25x rule. Multiply your expected annual expenses by 25 to find the portfolio target at a 4% withdrawal rate, or multiply by 30 to apply the more conservative rate appropriate for longer retirements. These are not arbitrary multiples. They are the algebraic inverse of Bengen's SAFEMAX, translated into a portfolio target that anyone can calculate from their current spending. The reason longer retirements require lower withdrawal rates involves what researchers call sequence of returns risk. The danger that a major market downturn in the first several years of retirement can permanently impair your capacity to recover. A retiree who experiences a 40% market decline in year 2 faces a fundamentally different situation than one who faces the same decline in year 20. Early losses force larger percentage withdrawals at depressed asset prices, locking in permanent capital destruction. Bengen's own data showed this clearly. The historically worst periods to retire were 1966 and 1929, not because average returns were catastrophic over subsequent decades, but because severe losses arrived early. One area where this framework consistently underserves early retirees is healthcare. Research by HealthView Services estimated in 2023 that a couple retiring at 65 can expect to spend over $300,000 on healthcare across their retirement. For a couple retiring at 40, the exposure is substantially larger and falls primarily in the years before Medicare eligibility at 65. Private insurance premiums, deductibles, and out-of-pocket costs in this window can add thousands of dollars per year to baseline withdrawal needs. Michael Kitzes, a financial planning researcher who has written extensively on withdrawal rate literature, has argued that healthcare inflation, which has historically run 2 to 3 percentage points above general CPI, represents one of the most systematically underestimated risks in early retirement planning. In 2006, financial planners Jonathan Guyton and William Klinger published research in the Journal of Financial Planning describing what they called decision rules for dynamic withdrawals, an approach now known as the guardrail strategy. Rather than withdrawing a fixed percentage regardless of portfolio performance, the guardrails approach adjusts spending based on portfolio conditions. If portfolio value grows substantially, withdrawals increase. If the portfolio falls and the effective withdrawal rate climbs above a defined ceiling, spending is reduced. Guyton and Klinger's simulation showed that these flexible rules allowed initial withdrawal rates as high as 5.2% to maintain high success probabilities, but only for retirees with genuine willingness to cut spending in down markets. The behavioral assumption embedded in the standard 4% rule is often overlooked. It implicitly treats spending as fixed regardless of market conditions. Real spending behavior tends to be more adaptive. Research by David Blanchett at Morningstar in 2014 identified what he called the retirement spending smile, the observation that retiree spending typically declines in real terms during the middle phase of retirement, before rising again near the end due to healthcare costs. Because actual spending naturally falls during the years when sequence of returns risk is highest, the effective safe withdrawal rate for flexible spenders may be somewhat higher than the static model suggests, provided you are genuinely prepared to reduce discretionary spending during bad markets rather than treating the annual withdrawal as a guaranteed floor. There is also a psychological dimension to financial independence that behavioral finance researchers have only recently started to document. Studies of individuals who have reached their target portfolio size consistently find that many continue working for additional years, driven by what practitioners have come to call one more year syndrome, the tendency to raise the bar incrementally rather than accepting that the math is complete. The behavioral root appears to be loss aversion. The fear of running out of money looms larger in the mind than the concrete evidence that the portfolio is sufficient. Pfau has noted that this psychology, while understandable, carries its own cost. The additional years spent accumulating beyond the target are years not spent living the life the portfolio was built to fund. One final dimension of the research deserves attention. Scott, Watson, and Sharp, writing in the Financial Analyst's Journal in 2009, noted that applying U.S. historical return data introduces a meaningful optimism bias for globally diversified investors. The United States has delivered exceptional long-term equity returns relative to most other national markets, returns that, by definition, most global investors did not share. Retirees constructing internationally diversified portfolios may be operating with a slightly more generous historical baseline than their actual portfolio composition warrants, and Pfau's international research reinforces this caution. What this body of research ultimately provides is not a single answer, but a framework for asking precise questions. How long is your retirement horizon? How flexible is your spending? Do you have any capacity to earn supplemental income in the first decade, when sequence of returns risk is highest? Bengen himself, in a 2020 conversation with Michael Kitzes, noted that he would personally use a figure closer to 4.5% given updated data, extending the historical record forward. A revision he described as consistent with stronger equity performance in the decades after his original study. The number that emerged from Bengen's spreadsheets in 1994 was the beginning of a conversation, not its conclusion. The research it generated has given anyone patient enough to understand it something genuinely valuable: the ability to calculate, with historically grounded precision, the exact point at which accumulated capital can permanently replace earned labor. That threshold has a name, it has a formula, the rest is math. Subscribe to Wealth Science for more research-backed financial insights every week.